Welcome back to the Hilly Billy decline section, and you will be delighted to hear that the decline section is also so exciting as well as contain a lot of tricks just like the accepted one. So after our move order e4, c6, bishop c4, d5 and bishop to b3, in my last episode we have looked at the accept variation and what to do if your opponent continue with pawn takes e4. But as you can see, I have highlighted by the arrows, black can various way to decline this gambit, and let's find out how we can conquer them. Let's start with the most trickiest one, e5, and I must say that whenever my opponent plays this, I think there's a trick around the corner. The move which I am going to recommend against this start with knight to f3, and black has three choices. Amongst them, if you look at the database here, bishop to g4 is by far the most popular choice. But I can't tell you how many people has fallen for this, as now white can simply win a pawn in the opening stage. The line goes as follows: pawn takes d5, c takes d5. Now you play h3. So if bishop try to run away, then g4 and then we can take on e5. So black response is forced, he has to take on f3, and after queen captures f3, every single move is attacking the pawn. Knight f6, what else? And now we keep the pressure more with knight to c3, and after this, no matter whatever black plays, he is going to lose the pawn. For example, if he plays the move d4, then we can simply lop off on b7, and after something like knight to d7 and knight to d5. Apart from winning the pawn, we can also create the pressure on the f7, which is not easy to deal with. All in all, I think black is already busted just within the 11th move. Okay, that is d4. What about the most natural move, e4? And this is where the big trap comes, guys, as we have this nice but rare move, queen to f5. And suddenly we have 3 attack on the d5 pawn, which can no longer defend it. Well, black can try the move g6 here, but white has equally nice reply, namely queen to e5 check. And it doesn't matter however black blocks, let's say queen to e7, then we can exchange everything. Queen takes, bishop takes, knight takes, and the end result is we are coming out as a complete pawn up. So this is one of the high profile trick exists in this bishop to g5 variation. Okay, let's move on to the second choice. D captures e4, played in roughly 350 Lichess games. Big blunder, and I think you have spotted instantly. Yup, knight captures e5, looking at juicy f7 square, and believe it or not, black is already hard pressed just within the opening stage. By far the most popular choice is bishop to e6, which is already a big blunder, as after the simple continuation, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen check, g6 and knight captures g6. No matter however black plays, he get a completely lost position. For example, the best reply black can do over here is knight to f6, attacking our queen, and after our queen to h3, black can move the rook and save it, but after queen to e6, bishop to e7, now you exchange everything on e7 and then castle on the king side, whereupon if you count the material, Yup, no surprises. 2 pawn up advantage just within the 13th move of the game. The second move, knight to h6, doesn't solve the problem, as we can lash out with d4, and our threat is very simple. We want to take this knight and then take on f7, something which black has to respond immediately. Now, recently I have beat a 2100 very quickly, where my opponent played some logical moves. Bishop to d6. So his idea is that if you take my knight, I am going to take your knight as well. And this is exactly happened in the game. Bishop takes h6, bishop takes e5, and now the sting in the tail. Queen to h5, a double attack. And it's not easy to parry all these threats. For example, in the game, my opponent tried to defend everything with queen to f6. But after the simple continuation, pawn takes e5, queen takes h6, and queen takes f7, black king remain in the center high and dry, and white get all the fun from here. The third move I want to consider is queen to g5, which is a kind of elephant gambit territory. But it's a worst one, as in this variation black king stuck in the center, and the line I am going to recommend goes like this. You first take on f7, king to e7, now you play d4 attacking the queen, and after queen takes g2 you simply park your rook on the f1 square. After bishop to h3, bishop to c4, white has defended everything, but the big time problem for the black camp is his king is a clear-cut target in the upcoming middle game. White has a simple plan. He wants to take out the queenside pieces and castle on the queenside. Last, if you think that hang on, but isn't black can take on h2 and attack your rook? Well, this is a trap black can fall for, and the continuation is very simple. You play queen to h5, pinning down that bishop, and after a sample line, g6, queen to h4 check, knight to f6, bishop to g5, bishop to g7, white has this winning move, knight to g4. So not only we are attacking 3 times on f6, but this is also hitting the queen. And after queen to d6, the simplest move in the world, you take the piece and get a complete opening advantage. The second move I want to consider here is d4, which I most oftenly faced in my online blitz games. And against this, my planning of campaign is very simple. You continue with d3, and if you have watched my attacking chess gambit against Scandinavian, I have recommended this plan, where white plays the move f4, followed up with knight to f3 and castle on the king side, whereupon he get tremendous attack on the black king. Not so surprising, there are some traps here as well. For example, if you check the database, by far e5 is the most popular choice. And when we play f4, what else? Bishop to d6, defending the e5 pawn. Well, I'm afraid this is a big time mistake by black, as now white can unleash the following sequence. Pawn takes e5, bishop takes e5, and after queen to h5, again and again in this line, this queen move can create the double attack. One of my recent game against a 1900 rated player continue with queen to e7, defending both the threat. But what has been missed out is, white has this nice pawn grabbing move, bishop captures f7, and the big point is, if black doesn't take it, then his king going to be misplaced. And even though queen captures f7 leads to a completely lost position after queen captures e5 check, queen to e7, and queen captures d4, where the end result is white is coming out as a 2-pawn advantage, which is almost close to the winning one. Are you really enjoying so far? Well, let's continue the third black option, namely knight to f6. And I think this knight to f6 and e6 leads to the French territory, whereupon white is well set to meet black on the king's side. For example, against all of this line, I'm going to recommend the move e5, and after knight to d7, we get this advanced French kind of structure with d4. And the point is, after e6, as white has not committed the move knight to f3, I'm going to propose this nice idea starting with knight to e2. The big point is we keep our f-pawn flexible so that we can push it as far as it goes. And as you will see, this factor is very critical in the upcoming middle game. Well, to understand the overall plan from the white perspective, I like to show you one of my recent game against a candidate master where I crushed him very quickly within the opening stage. My opponent lash out here with c5, and obvious enough I want to keep my pawn chain with c3, and now he start pressurizing with knight to c6. Okay, no issues. After bishop to e7, as black is trying to castle on the king's side, the key thing you have to remember, f4, and if allowed, then we will definitely play the move f5. Please remember, if your opponent plays g6, you can even think of g4 and f5 and get some quick attack on the black king side. At this point, my opponent indeed castle, which allows what I want to do, namely f5. Okay, we have few exchanges on the board. C captures d4, C captures d4. Now he plays queen to b6. So his threat is, as the d pawn is pinned, he wants to take on e5. So I park my king in the corner. And now knight to a5 attacking the bishop. Now the key route you have to remember is, as this bishop is not well placed on this diagonal, we are going to put on this lovely square, whereupon it can straight away participate on the king side attack. For example, my opponent didn't like the idea of f6, so he continued with e captures f5. I played a nice intermediate move, knight to c3, and after he defended with queen to c6, now I gobble up the f5 pawn. Well, from here onwards, white attack just crashed on black, and you will be amazed how quickly this happened, as my opponent tried some queenside activity with knight to c4. I responded with rook to h5, a cheap threat, which my opponent defended with g6. But I am very proud for my next move, even though it is not liked by engine, namely queen to d3. Black cannot take the rook as there is a mate threatened on h7, so my opponent played bishop to b4. I reveal my whole idea, that is swinging the queen on the king side. And after king to h8 and rook to h6, the final mistake happened of the game, that is rook to e8. Probably he thinks that he wants to bring down this bishop or the knight to protect his king, but in order to achieve that, he made a big mistake, as white can by force win the material with queen to h4, attacking on h7, knight to f8, defending, And when you're attacking, you don't want to be mad and just looking at one side of the board. Sometimes tactics do occur on the other side. Well, I hope you indeed see the move bishop to h5, skewering the queen and rook, so that after b5, bishop takes b5, queen to e6, I take the rook, and when my opponent recaptures, my next move forced the resignation. Did you see it? Yup, the simple but very effective knight captures d5, whereupon this knight is going to create havoc on the king side. And altogether this position is completely hopeless for the black camp. So remember this new fresh idea. Do not play knight to f3, rather play knight to e2 and push your f pawn further, which give white an amazing kingside attack. Last but not least, what to do against the move e6? Well, no surprises. Yup, we are going to play e5 and create this advanced French structure which gives white a space on the king side. And the good thing about this line is black has wasted a move with c6 and then he has to go c5. So in a way, he is wasting a big tempo. Okay, c5, the most popular choice. And since black is threatening the move c4, my recommendation is you start with c3, whereupon black has two major choices. If we continue with the routine moves such as knight to c6, then we can easily erect our pawn structure with d4. And after a sample line, c captures d4, c captures d4, bishop to b4 check, knight to c3, and knight to e7, where black is trying to castle quickly on the king side, which at first sight looks so good, but this is exactly playing into the white hand. You have a very simple plan. First, you arrange the bishop on this nice diagonal, and after bishop to d7 and the move knight to f3, this is what I have covered in my French wing gambit territory. All white wants to do is, he wants to play h4 and knight to g5, whereupon some sacrifices on the pawns, and black is ill-advised to go on the king side. So you can find out more of this kind of tactical patterns by watching my French wing gambit tutorials. To just give you a sample, at this point, black cannot castle as we have this deadly Greek gift coming up. And if black accepts this, then after knight to g5, he cannot play king to g8 due to queen to h5. And if king to g6, then h4 finish the black. Well, the h5 is coming up, and if he plays f5, then even though we can continue with h5, king has only one space to go afterwards. Yup, the simple move, knight to e6, grab the black sweetie, and in fact, the king. So it is very obvious that if black continues with his normal French defense structure and goes on the king side, then white attack is just waiting there to crush enemy king. Last but not least, what happens if black continue with c4? Well, no issues. We are going to play bishop to c2 and our planning of campaign will remain same. Sooner or later, we are going to look out for the move d4. There is a high-profile game from the database, goes like this. Black plays knight to c6, attacking the pawn. White defend with the queen. Black renew the threat, and finally, white grab the space with f4 as well as defend the e5 pawn. Okay, black played knight g to e7, trying to reroute the knight. Finally, white deliver this thematic break d4, and if allowed, then this pawn chain can be dangerous for the black. So black immediately chop it off with the n%. White recapture, and after knight to f5, some simple moves: knight to f3, bishop to c5, stopping white to castle. So white tried to attack this bishop with knight to d2. His idea is to play knight to b3, so black sense it and get out of the attack with bishop to b6. Anyways, knight to b3 has been played, and this is what you need to understand in this line. What really white wants to do is plonk in this juicy knight on d4 where it cannot be shaken, and upcoming middle game / end games are always superior for the whites. This is exactly happened in this game. Look how easily white achieved this. Black castles. Now we have some exchanges. Bishop takes f5, pawn takes f5, bishop to e3. Black plays bishop to e6, which allow white to create more exchanges. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight to d4, and after knight takes and the move knight takes d4. This is what I was talking about. So we have a middle game where white has a supreme knight on d4, where black has absolutely bad bishop sitting on e6. And with some careful play, I think this is definitely a great position to play as a white. Just for your knowledge, you will be surprised that engine gives plus 1.8 advantage to the white, which is obviously the huge one from this position. That's it, guys. I hope with these 2 lectures, now you're confident enough to play this Hilly Billy attack in the tournament practice. The good point I like about this line is, it doesn't matter whether black accept the pawn or declined it. In almost all the lines, not only white can get some cool tricks and traps, but overall, white get a tremendous attack on the black king, something which we are really looking forward against a passive Caro-Kann player. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I will meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.